Hey, what's going on? If you guys are new to the channel, my name is Milan, and if you guys aren't new here, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be installing some upgraded suspension components on my Nissan 370Z. I have an alignment booked for this Friday, so I've got a lot of stuff to do in order to get the car ready to get an alignment. My Z already has some super nice Fortunato coilovers with Swift springs, and I want to change the springs out for something that's going to be a little bit stiffer. I also have some beefier Hotchkis sway bar bars, found both up front and rear, that I featured on the channel last year. They came with regular stamped steel brackets. They're adequate, however they aren't going to be as light or rigid as billet aluminum ones. In my coilover install video, I showed you how to do exactly that, and I left the stock control arms as is. Since I didn't change the ride height by much, I was able to get away with using the stock control arms with the standard eccentric bolts. However, very grippy tires will be able to easily knock the alignment out of spec with the factory bolts. To remedy that issue, I'm going to be installing SPL's eccentric bolt lockout kit, and to change the alignment angles to my desired spec, I'll be replacing the factory arms for SPL's full titanium series of control arms. Considering I did a full in-depth install for the coilovers, I'm not going to go into the same kind of details. To find that video, you can find a link in the top right corner. Essentially, to swap out the springs found on the coilovers, you want to have the entire strut removed from the car to ensure adjustments are being made equally from left to right. In the engine bay, you have to remove the strut tower brace and the 3 nuts securing the strut mount to the body of the car. From there, with the wheel removed, you can find 3 bolts and the 1 nut securing this lower brace in place. With it all removed, the strut can slide off of the top of the end link bolt. Don't forget to remove the brake lines and ABS sensors fastened to the front strut. With those components removed, the strut can be removed from the wheel well area. At this point, we can get our 14 kilo springs and get them ready to swap them out for the 11K springs that are on the coils. Take a measurement from the bottom of the top hat to any point on the lower coilover cup, just so that we can verify that we have the same ride height after we install the new springs. You can start unscrewing each of the rings and collars to remove the spring pressure. Start at the bottom and set each component aside until we get to the last ring that is securing the preload. After you loosen it, you can see the spring now can move and now can slide off of the shock body. Grab the stiffer spring and then reinstall everything in reverse order. For an in-depth coilover spring change video, click the link in the top right corner. It should help you out, especially if you have seized collars. Double check the measurements and make any adjustments if necessary. Before installing the coilovers back on the car, it's a good time to swap out the upper control arm for the upgraded one from SPL. With the bungee cable supporting the spindle, we can remove the ball joint bolt. You'll need a 14mm open-ended wrench and 14mm socket to loosen it and remove it. After you remove the bolt, it'll allow the control arm to swing up. The last 2 bolts fastening the control arm to the body of the car are held in place by 2 14mm bolts. After you zap them out, you can remove the arm. First things first. Now there's a left and right upper control arm, so ensure that the ball joint faces the same way with the arm that you just removed. Following that, since the control arms can control both caster and camber, I would align the arms to be as close to OEM length as possible so that you can drive your car to your local mechanic and get an alignment done to dial everything in later. Loosen up both the titanium bolts and the aluminum locking clamp to allow the double adjuster and rod end to be adjusted to a longer length. You want both rods to increase in size at the same rate so that there is even load on the threads. I ended up adjusting all 4 of these rods to be around 67 to 68 millimeters each. This gave me a good baseline without a lot of camber. You don't really want to drive your car around on these specs, however this will be more than adequate just to get you to the alignment shop. Now the last thing to note about these control arms is that the thinner aluminum spacer for both rod ends will face the strut. You want the fat spacers facing the outsides. You can then reinstall the hardware securing the bolts to the body of the car and the spindle. You can then reinstall the strut into the car, followed by all of its hardware. All the torque specs are going to be found in the description box. The last component on the front end of the vehicle to install is going to be the billet brackets. The aluminum brackets weigh 29% less than the steel ones that come with the kit, and since they're stiffer, they will be offering less deflection, making the sway bars more effective. There are 2 nuts securing the bracket to the body of the car, and once you zap them off, you can see the design difference. Now I'm not sure if it's really worth the upgrade on a stock vehicle, but when you upgrade your entire suspension system like I am, every little bit helps. Reinstalling them is going to be super easy. You can keep the old poly bushings in there and slide the new bracket over top, given that you already have the Hotchkis bars in place. Tighten the nuts up to the factory spec and you're set. With the front suspension now complete, we can install the springs that we removed from the front struts and swap them out with the weaker 8 kilo springs found in the rear. Now, just like the front, it makes the swap super easy with the strut removed. There's going to be one lower bolt through the shock and 2 nuts found on the top hat. With it removed from the car, disassemble the entire strut. If the collars are super tight, don't be scared to put some extra force behind them. With the new springs installed and the shock body protected, our work here is done. Before we reinstall the strut, the rear arms all have to go in. The Eccentric bolt lockout kit is designed to work with the adjustable rear camber arms and rear toe arms only, not the rear traction arms. The Eccentric bolt is how the OEM setup can get solid arms to give you different alignment angles. Since the SPL arms are adjustable, we have to ensure that the bolt location can't move, as it might throw off our alignment. The offset bolt moves the control arm in and out depending on its orientation. The Eccentric bolt lockout kit is going to be replaced in this exact order. The rear toe arms are made from the same 6000 series billet aluminum and titanium hardware. They have spherical bushings rather than the rubber ones, and they save 1.8 pounds per arm over the factory buckets. To install them, the stock arms need to come out. There is a bolt and nut with a 17 mil head on the knuckle side with the Eccentric bolt on the subframe side. You'll note that these two arms are a different design. I can use this standard arm design since I don't have the OEM style coilovers with the divorced spring. The new SPL arm doesn't need the spring bucket. However, if you are still using the OEM design setup for your suspension, you can get the SPL arm in that design as well. Moving on to the camber arms, you can see that it also has the spherical bushings. They weigh almost a pound less per arm over the stock pieces. They're fully adjustable and are made from the same 6000 series super strong aluminum with the titanium hardware. Using the same 17 mil socket, remove the bolt and nut and the Eccentric bolt. We're then going to adjust the length of the SPL arm to match the length of the factory camber arm. With that complete, you can then reinstall the arm back onto the car. As for the rear traction arm, it's a slightly different design. Removing it is just like the others, just zap the 2 bolts out and take the arm out. The SPL arm still has to be adjusted just like the other arms. However, when it comes to reinstalling it, it has to be installed in a certain orientation. Now, just to be clear, all of these arms should be installed with the text facing down. Since the traction arms are left and right specific, the easiest way to remember how to install them is to have the titanium hardware face towards the outside of the car. Okay, quick timeout. It will work with the hardware facing the outside, but it will give you a little bit more room for your wheel if the hardware is facing inwards. So ideally, I would want to swap the left and right arms. However, it will work as is. Also, the small spacer needs to be installed before the spherical bearing end of the arm can be installed. Reuse the OEM hardware and torque them to spec. Last but not least, the billet sway bar brackets for the rear sway bar can be installed. Just like the fronts, you don't need to remove the bar to install them. Simply find the hardware securing the brackets to the body, unscrew them, swap the brackets, and you're set. Since you guys have stuck with me until now, I've got a little surprise for you. So I'm obviously not going to be running the space savers for my summer wheel and tire setup, which means I can't use the same shank seat lug nuts. For this summer, I want to install some extended studs, which means I'll need to use open-ended lug nuts. These R26 2-piece lug nuts are my weapon of choice. As for the wheels, I have some 18-inch wheels and rubber, but I don't have them mounted and balanced yet. So I'm going to need to run these wheels that I have here that I traded for my old 20-inch Rays 57 FXXs. These are 3-piece work VSXXs. The fronts are 19 by 9.5 plus 23 with a 2.5-inch lip, with the rears being 19 by 10.5 plus 23 with a 3-inch lip. I'm not too sure how long I'm going to be running these things on my car, but I think they're going to look awesome on the Z in the meantime. Now, if I wanted to build the Z to be parked, I would essentially lower the suspension a little bit more considering I'm on coilovers, but that's not exactly what this car is going to be designed for. So I bought this car to be pushed. I bought it to be beaten on. I paid however much money for the 300 and plus horsepower that the engine has. I want to use every single one of them. So the suspension right now is going to be staying pretty much as is with a little bit of wheel and tire gap, just so that the suspension can articulate, it can move, and it can properly move up and down the stroke. I'm not building this thing for other people to enjoy. I'm building this for me to enjoy. I want to drive this car, I want to beat on it, and I want to have a great time. If you guys want to do the same kind of thing, you guys can find the parts for this video in the description box. Minus the wheels, everything that you guys see in this video is going to be able to allow you to drive your car at its limits without having any kind of deflection. Now, I'm just as annoyed as you guys are with this whole COVID-19 thing going on. It's really limiting us from where we're allowed to go. However, given that I am building this car for myself, I can still take this for a drive. I can enjoy it down the back roads. I can go for a rip whenever I want. I don't have to go to a car meet. I don't have to go park it by my other buddies to enjoy it and get some satisfaction out of the car. However, if that's what you guys are going for, that's more than fine for you. But for me, it's not exactly my style. So that's why this car is going to be getting some different wheels and tires later, something a little bit stickier, a little bit grippier, and something that's going to be lighter than some 3-piece wheels. Now, they do look really good, I have to say. However, I don't know if this is really my thing. I'm going to be rocking this in the meantime, but until I can get my new wheels and tires mounted and balanced, these things are going to have to stay. Let me know what you guys think of this. SPL makes parts for essentially every single nice car out there. You can get Z parts, FRS parts, you can get pretty much everything in between, and they're all really nice quality. As for the alignment that I have scheduled, I'm going to get the car lined up so it can basically be handled at the track. So I'm going to be putting a little bit of front camber in, I'm going to have a little bit of toe here and there, but all my specs are going to be found in the description box so you guys can know what exactly to align your car to if you guys want to do the same thing. Anyways, guys, if you have any further questions regarding the video, comment section's down there. If you guys aren't subscribed, click the sub button. On Instagram, if you aren't following me, definitely do it. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.